Well, it has been 50 years since the Boston busing crisis. It was a period where Boston public schools were under court control to desegregate through a system of busing students between predominantly white and black areas of the city. The city's busing crisis led to a series of racial protests and riots, and it caught national attention during the mid-70s. Among those students who experienced the crisis firsthand was Robert Lewis Jr. He is now the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Boston. I had the pleasure of speaking with him yesterday to learn more about his experience during that time. Mr. Lewis, we want to thank you for sharing your experience with us today and chatting about this with us. My first question for you is just if you can tell us a little bit about what it was like for you growing up in East Boston during this time.
You know, it was an interesting time, but East Boston was your home. You're a young person, you know, it's a great neighborhood. I had a lot of great friends, went to school there. But also during that time, there were very few black families that lived in East Boston. So, but you became part of the culture. You played hockey, you did sports, you got involved. Like, listen, Italian food was like, the food of the day. But it was just, for me and my family, it was just a great experience. And all of that was prior to busing. And then busing like literally shifted and changed everything.
And you've written this Newsweek article. It is titled, A Close Friend Firebombed My Home, So I Made a Life-Changing Decision. I read the article this morning. For people who haven't had a chance to read the article, just tell us what happened that night to you and your family. And the second part of the question for you is, how did it influence the work that you do today at the Boys and Girls Club?
It's so funny. It happened so long ago and it's still so fresh. The night before, I was with my friend and we had dinner, so we had dinner together. And the next day I seen him walking towards my home. And so I thought he was coming to pick me up and we were going to go hang out. And something was interesting. So he's about 25 feet away, but I noticed that he's carrying a bottle. And so I'm thinking maybe he's drinking water or soda or whatever the heck it was. But I can look closer and I seen like a cloth. I mean, it's clear as day. And then to see him light that cloth and throw like this Molotov cocktail into my house, and like the front yard and our front kitchen area and everything just went up like in flames, and that was it. But my house was firebombed and I was stunned and shocked and angry. But what also happened during that time, Breana, there were a number of families, 8 to 10 plus black families that got firebombed. And we were all folks that lived in the neighborhood. And I was 16 and didn't understand why there wasn't outrage, like outrage. So that's going on, while also our folks are coming in and being bussed into our neighborhood. And folks were protesting and picketing. And then you're in the school buildings and you're people that you grew up with your whole life that are out there saying, we don't want blank in our schools, right? And you can identify the N-word. And so that was tough for me to see your friends, the kids you grew up with, the kids you went to camp with, the kids that like you're playing football with. And when there wasn't outrage and there wasn't this frustration, and my mom was this big activist, at the age of 16, and I made this claim, I don't know what I'm going to do, but for the rest of my life, I am going to be about how do you bring people together? How do you activate communities? Because I don't ever want something like this to ever happen to anybody else. And that was the trajectory that shifted my life. And everything I've done has been about youth, community, action, and honestly about equity. And, and that's been important to me. So when I'm here at the Boys and Girls Club, that's what it's all about. It is about the power of community, the power of our young folks, ensuring our young folks have every opportunity they deserve to be successful in life for whatever career track that they choose. So 1976's firebombing led me to where I am and us having this conversation today.
And Robert, in your opinion, how do you feel like Boston is doing now when it comes to providing opportunities for young people of color? How have you seen it progress? Because you lived through it in the 70s and now an organization like the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah. there's a lot of things that I've seen that have gotten better, and it's taken a while. But still, the one staying is that if you travel nationally, it's very interesting the number of people I meet that I was asked, Black people live in Boston? You feel safe in Boston? So the one thing I don't think that Boston has done yet is that Boston is actually have told the story of Boston today. Because I think there's a national, and we knew this, like, a lot of Black and Latino conferences don't happen here. A few do, but I think it's so much about the imagery and the history. But if you look at Boston today, there's more Black and Latino leaders leading organizations. You look at our current city council, it is more diverse than it ever was. And I start to think if we had a diverse city council in the 70s, would we have had, the issues of busing? We look at our mayor and you look at our governor, like, it's not just our governor, a leader in the LGBTQ plus community, our mayor being an Asian American woman, our city council president being of Haitian descent. I think Boston has a great story moving forward, but I still think we have to still think about, has our educational system of why it was about desegregation, it became about race when it should have been about the quality of education. And I think we lost that. So what it did is brought out the worst of race. And we're still a city that's still struggling and fighting and talking about it. But I believe that Boston has progressed well. And I believe a city of our size and magnitude should be a city leading the way on these issues about race, equity, inclusion as we're moving forward. So we have an opportunity to do that. And I really mean this, an opportunity of what we're talking about this morning. I hope that helps lead the way.
Robert, you touched on this a little bit, but I just want to ask you to expand on it, which is how has the Boys and Girls Club of Boston sort of helped you overcome what you experienced, what you went through, and then what do you want to see it become in the future for the kids of Boston?
Yeah, the one great thing, too, is it's really cool to be the president and CEO. When I was a kid in East Boston and I was a member of the Boys and Girls Club's dad, so it's almost coming full circle. What the busing did, the busing was about, when we start to think about it, it was around segregation. And the great thing about our clubs is our clubs are in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, South Boston, Chelsea, and Chelsea. So we are making up all the, parts of our city. And we have membership that represents every neighborhood of Boston. So what the clubs have done for me is to show that if you're running great programs and resources, you can unite and engage folks. The other thing, too, is 80% of our young folks identify as kids of color. So when you start to think, and if you put all of our young people together, we represent and we look more like what the city of Boston represents today in terms of its own diversity. And what does that do for us? One, it allows us to talk about the issues. But it allows us to take our young folks representing these communities to be even that much more engaged in how we're partnering with the business community, how we're partnering with academia, how we're partnering with health and hospitals, for jobs and careers. Boston is such a leader in so many ways, but we want to make sure that our young folks can participate in these opportunities, especially in the 21st century economy for jobs. That this great city offers. So the great opportunity I have is being a Boston kid, growing up through the clubs, having mentors and folks who believed in me, for us to continue to do this, not just like when I just had that experience in East Boston, but we can experience this citywide and in Chelsea. The one thing I could also say is we are addressing those issues around race and those issues around gender and those issues around geography. Because we want our young folks to know that this whole city, and I say this, my office is right outside on the Rose Kennedy Greenway. The Rose Kennedy Greenway belongs to our young folks. The Seaport belongs to our young folks. So the Boys and Girls Clubs provide us this opportunity that this great city of ours is the great city for all of our young folks that can provide prosperity, hope, and opportunities for them as well.
Robert Lewis Jr., CEO of the Boston Boys and Girls Club, an incredible, like you said, full circle. Go check out his Newsweek article, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you, Breana. Thank you.